producing during the day. We've got to be able to stand up for them. We've got to make sure that we're standing up to Harry Reid, who is talking about opening up this compact to be able to address the needs of Nevada. We're going to be standing up for this district and for the state of Colorado. But the one thing is, this isn't, Mr. Tapia, just a state issue. We also have something called the EPA, which is trying to define the waters of the U.S. to where they will control the waters of the U.S. I sat in committee with the Undersecretary trying to get their definition, and we could make a great argument if we poured this on the floor right now. It just became a water of the U.S. by the definition of the EPA. So we have the federal government that's trying to be able to reach into Colorado water policy, hurting our farm and ranch communities, hurting Pueblo and our future here. We've got to be standing up not only at the state level but on the federal level to be able to protect our water. I'm doing that and will continue to do that as your congressman in Washington.
Mr. Tapia?
Yes, protecting our water is paramount. It really is. And again, as I stated, this agricultural community that we have in the 3rd Congressional District, without the ag, then our economy wouldn't be as vibrant as it is. But I do believe that we need to be good stewards in making sure that our waterways do not get polluted. Now, as a civil engineer, I worked on several projects that were water treatment plants, sewage treatment plants, and I had to abide by the EPA guidelines of what is acceptable in our waterway. Well, we are the stewards. We need to make sure, and we need to ensure the water coming out of Colorado Springs, we do not get only their wastewater here in Pueblo. We're tired of that. And if it takes EPA to force them to clean up the water before they send it down the Arkansas Valley and the Fountain Creek, you know, we need to get behind that, because we're tired of getting water that is contaminated and should be cleaned before it left their borders.
Yep. Mr. Tipton?
You know, that's exactly why I've already been leading the way on that, Mr. Tapia, in addressing flooding coming out of the Fountain Creek. Worked together with our senators, actually, and we've been able to get bipartisan support out of our congressional delegation to be able to address the Fountain Creek issues, to be able to make sure that with the conduit, the people in southeastern Colorado can actually have clean drinking water. But apparently where we disagree, when you're talking about the EPA, I don't want them regulating the waters of Colorado, telling us what we can do, where we can use it, when we can use it. I'm pushing back. I'm going to stand up for those private property rights as well.
One more, Steve. The Fountain Creek is very meaningful to me. I've worked very hard in the legislature. I was part of the group that was a bipartisan group, including El Paso and Pueblo, to get the Fountain Creek Water Authority. The Water Authority was put in place so that we would have a means to be able to develop, protect, build whatever we need on the Fountain Creek to make it something that we could be proud of. You know, my example is Cherry Creek going into the Platte Valley water. There's a confluence park that's absolutely gorgeous in downtown Denver. Waterways, parkways, development all around it. That could be the vision that we have for Fountain Creek. But I don't want El Paso County to not be accountable for what it's sending down to us. And other than the federal government, I don't know who can enforce that.
Okay, Mr. Tipton, final rebuttal.
I'm glad you've got a lot of faith in the federal government, because I don't. So, let me tell you the problem with that type of analysis. The EPA, they just don't stop. We've seen 174,000 pages added to the Federal Register. More government, 4,000 new regulations that are currently in the pipeline, coming out of the federal government. An annual cost to our businesses, which is being passed on to every consumer, making the cost of a loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, cost more to the tune of $2 trillion. You know, you worked in state legislature. I did too for one term. Had something called DORA. You know, and if Scott hired Abel to work in the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and I came in the morning, said, Abel, how many regulations did you write today? If you said none, you'd probably get fired. You may like to incentivize rulemaking coming out of Washington, D.C. I'm fighting for the REINS Act to make sure that we're getting control right back here at home. We're making Republicans, Democrats actually have a role to play in that rulemaking authority to make sure we're addressing the community needs right here at home, not out of Washington, D.C.
I'd like to, Steve.
We need to get to one more question, Abel. You can address it at the beginning of the next one if you'd like. Mr. Tipton, this will be our final question. Do you have specific plans to pay down the national debt? Do you favor any reforms of our tax system, for example, perhaps considering the fair tax proposal that some lawmakers support?
You know, right now, we're looking at a $17.8 trillion debt. Look at your neighbor sitting right beside you right now. Better than $50,000 now is your portion of the national debt. Every person here, and I know many of you that are here tonight, you're responsible people that understand you've got to pay back a debt. Federal government's no different. We've actually passed bills through the House of Representatives to be able to address the national debt and to be able to help pay it down. We passed through the House of Representatives 4 different budgets before the Senate ever moved to be able to address it. These are first steps to be able to actually address what is probably the most predictable crisis that this country faces, something that's going to impact our children and our grandchildren. And it's going to take actually making some tough choices. Federal government cannot be all things, and I don't believe any of us really expect it to be all things to all people. We're going to have to start prioritizing that spending to make sure that we're addressing the common needs. I happen to support transportation. I've advocated for a 7-year transportation bill to be able to build the economy. But we can't afford to do everything literally in this nation. So when we're looking at tax reform, you bet, one of the first things we need to be able to do is to be able to create more taxpayers. That's called getting people back to work from the lowest labor participation rate in 36 years. Not going to be government jobs, it's going to be private sector jobs, because as hard as people work in government, and we've got some good folks, not one of them pays enough tax to be able to cover their own wage. We better get this economy stimulated and moving, and then have responsible legislators, and I hope you'll join with me in calling for a national amendment to the Constitution to balance the budget of the United States just like we do in the state of Colorado, and we can win this fight.
Mr. Tapia?
Thank you, Steve. We have, in the last 2 years, stimulated the economy to where our debt is being paid down as we speak. The debt is tied to our economy and how our economy grows. We have had a stimulated economy here for the last couple of years, and hopefully for the next 2 years. The way we can address the national debt is to stimulate the economy. Now, we also have a situation where the people here are probably not the richest of the rich, but the ones that have benefited by the growth of our economy and the good times that we've dealt have taken their money and they put it overseas or offshore, not investing back in Colorado. We need to look at our tax system and find out why they are taking the wealth outside of the country and try to develop a system to where instead of moving their wealth outside of the borders, to re-energize it and bring it back into the state. I did see a proposal by Senator Bennett. He presented it to us that he wanted stimulation of some sort for those people that that enjoy outsourcing, working with other countries, taking their wealth and taking it outside of the United States. Yet, it was gained right here in the United States. We need to invest back into the United States. We got to encourage people not to take their money away from the United States, but reinvest it into our own people so we can grow our economy. When we grow our economy, that's when we work very seriously on the budget and reducing our budget deficit for generations to come.
Mr. Tipton?
Well, Ms. Tapia, I challenge you to show me the numbers. You just made the comment, and I wrote it down. We're paying down the debt as we speak. Where? We are seeing the debt of this country rise. We talk about stimulating the economy. You know, the president injected $1 trillion of your tax money that we didn't have in a stimulus that didn't work. Why don't we actually approve the Keystone Pipeline and put people back to work in this country? You know, just drove down the road, we look at Everest Steel. Everest Steel. If you're a union worker here, let's stand together. Let's work together. Let's go ahead and put Americans back to work. We don't need your federal money. We is shovel ready without any federal dollars to be able to come in to put people back to work. We can make the rebar. We can make the railroad rails right here in Pueblo, Colorado, perhaps, to be able to create jobs right here. But the idea of the federal government stimulating the economy, we've seen what a great success that's been. We have better than double-digit real unemployment in most of the 29 counties. Our folks are suffering. We need to be able to get them to work, and that means get government out of the way.
You're right. We do need to get our people to work. That is the cornerstone of what we need to do. Infrastructure is a big part of that. The Keystone Pipeline seems to be a litmus test. I support the Keystone Pipeline because it will create jobs, but I do have conditions that it has to be environmentally done to where we don't endanger the land that it actually crosses. Now, also, the oil goes down to the Gulf of Mexico. I'd like to, if I had my way, add an amendment to that, that we have first right of refusal to every barrel of oil that goes in there. Because what are we doing? Are we suffering the potential environmental crisis just to have a private company go to the Gulf of Mexico and ship all that oil to China? We need, if we are going to suffer the consequences. Now, the thing is that that crude is coming down to the Gulf through rail, trucking, a lot of other. That is what that really got my interest in supporting the pipeline. But I am an environmental engineer. That is my profession that I work. We have to ensure when we build that pipeline, we do it such that we can avoid any catastrophe and make sure we do it environmentally correct.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we're running out of time, so we're going to have concluding remarks. You may recall that Mr. Tipton won the coin toss and elected to conclude the event tonight. So we'll first have closing remarks from Mr. Tapia.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the sponsors of this event. I am so happy to be here with you tonight. I'm so happy to engage with this debate with Congressman Tipton. We didn't get that ability to do it in Durango, you know, very close to his home town. We didn't get to do it in Montrose. That was even closer than I would have had to.